The last voice of Earth. The council chamber was a ring of light around a dark center, and the dark center belonged to the human woman who stood there with her hands at her sides. Calm as stone in the tide, Alara Trent did not raise her voice. She did not lean on the podium. She did not ask for mercy or time. She looked up once into the tiers of color and movement, where 200 species stared back, and then she spoke in simple words they could all understand. My name is Alara Trent. I speak for Earth and for the Terran Commonwealth. We thank you for the years of talks. We thank you for the trade and the learning. We thank you for the chance to be heard. The air carried a soft hum from 1,000 translators. The fabric of the chamber glowed with gentle constellations that changed with the speaker. It had always made visitors feel small. It was meant to do that. But Alara did not seem small, she seemed steady. Like a mountain where clouds moved but the rock did not. A thin envoy with glassy skin raised a limb and waved. Proceed to the agenda, the envoy said. We must address human violations. The word violations rolled through the hall like a cold wind. Alara nodded once. I will address them. Not to argue, but to close. Our record is public. Our responses are recorded. We answered your charges. We waited for your rulings. We followed your paths. We learned your etiquette. We met your deadlines. We took your insults. We did it for almost 40 years. A low ripple of sound rose where the Vesca delegation sat. Their mandibles clicked and their lights flashed yellow. They had filed the loudest petitions. They had pushed the strongest sanctions. They were sure they would win today. Some of them smiled with narrow teeth. Alara did not smile. This is the last message you will receive from us in this chamber. Effective now, the Terran Commonwealth withdraws from all council activity. We end our observer status. We end our petitions. We end our committees. We end our votes. We will go home. The chamber froze. Even sound seemed to stop, then voices layered over voices. High and low, rough and smooth, metal and breath. You cannot, someone cried. There is no clause, someone else said. This is a tantrum, another voice hissed. Alara waited until the noise fell. She did not raise a hand. She did not ask for order. She only stood, and that was enough. We wish you peace, she said. Please remember, silence is not surrender. She turned off her microphone. She bowed. Not deep, not mocking, just a clean line of respect. Then she stepped back from the circle of light and walked to the side gate. 2 human aides in plain uniforms met her there. They did not hurry. They did not look around. They walked with her as if this were any normal meeting. And the next item on the calendar was lunch. Behind them, a dozen ambassadors fought to speak first. Screens lit with charts of exports and tonnage and patent rights. Voices rushed with warnings of disaster. The Zir High Clerk sang a chord that meant reconsider. The trio broker shook bright prisms and offered a temporary compliance compact. The Vesca chief called the guards. No guards came. The chamber guards had no orders for a species that was leaving by its own door. Alara did not look back. She left the chamber by a service corridor that smelled faintly of metal and ozone. She passed a window through it. The capital city spread like a web of pale rivers and blue sparks. The sky lanes were full. The stations were full. The markets were full. It would all go on without her. It would go on without humans, or so the city believed. A small shuttle waited on a private pad. The pilot was young and quiet. He had a scar on his chin and a nervous laugh he was trying not to let out. He saluted. She told him there was no need. He saluted anyway. They lifted off with a soft push and curved out over the river. The council spire shrank behind them until it was only a needle in the glow. Alara watched in silence until the spire disappeared into cloud. Then she reached into her jacket and touched a square of woven thread. It was the old Earth flag in miniature, blue and white and green, not the one with the stars or the stripes, a new one that children drew in school now. A circle of oceans around a small leaf. Her daughter had made it. The thread was uneven where the little hands had tugged too hard. Alara felt the rough edge and let her breath settle. Transmission is ready, the pilot said. It will go wideband on your mark. Alara nodded. Send it. Across the capital and then across 1,000 relays. The last message of Earth moved on a clean carrier. It did not carry threats, it did not carry demands. It carried a calm checklist. The checklist said that Terran diplomatic missions would close within 10 days. It said human corporate offices would honor current contracts and decline all renewals. It said Terran technology licenses would not be extended. It said human traffic would leave council space in waves. It said medical commitments to current patients would be fulfilled and then ended. It said all this in simple language, and at the end it said again, "We wish you peace." In a mining station on the edge of cold space, a crew chief with 4 arms played the message twice and rubbed the ridge of his forehead. Their drills used Terran cores. The cores hummed warm and safe. The old cores before Terran help had screamed and shattered and killed friends. He looked around at his team and then at the dark ore. He did not know how to tell them that the safe humming would stop. In a hospital dome lit soft and green, a mother sat beside a bed where her child slept inside a clear shell. Terran nanites moved like stars in the fluid. The attending medic spoke in a careful voice and promised that the course would finish. The mother nodded and held her breath for a long time and then let it out with a shaking sound. She knew what a course meant. She knew what no extension meant. In a shipyard where a dozen hulls floated like crescents, a foreman checked inventory and saw a column in red quantum drive injectors. Terran make, 0 incoming. He closed his eyes. He thought of the launch he had promised his crew. He thought of the long quiet of an unfinished hull, back in the shuttle. Ilara watched clouds part and the black of space open. The pilot set a course to the Terran embassy dock. A line of human ships held position like stones in a river. There were not many. Not gunships, not dreadnoughts. They were tugs and haulers and carriers and ferries. All of them were full, all of them were ready. A message arrived from the Council Secretariat. It was formal and urgent. It demanded a meeting. It demanded depositions. It demanded a hold on closures. Ilara read it once and filed it. She did not answer. Another message came from the Triel broker. It was not formal. It offered new terms and quick credits and a different class of access. It assumed human hunger. It missed the point. She did not answer that one either. Her comm line blinked with a secure channel. She accepted. A face appeared. It was older than when she last saw it. The hair had gone more silver. The eyes had more lines. The face smiled without showing teeth. "Madam Envoy," the voice said. "On schedule." "On schedule," Ilara said. "Phase 1 complete. Phase 2 moves without a sound," the voice said. "You will not be alone out there." "I know," Ilara said. She wanted to say more. She wanted to ask if this was right and if this would hurt too many, and if history would forgive them. But those questions had been asked in long rooms with no windows. They had been asked and answered. The answer had been steady. Build, withdraw, endure, return when ready. She touched the little cloth flag again and let it remind her why silence could be a gift. The shuttle settled into the human dock. The hatch opened to a narrow corridor that smelled like warm plastic and coffee. Voices echoed, laughter threaded through orders. It sounded like a ship ready to leave. A boy with a crate bigger than his chest tried to carry it by himself. A woman took one end and said, "We work in pairs." The boy nodded and smiled and did not complain. A clock on a bulkhead counted down. The numbers were green. 12 hours until the last human airlock on this station closed. Ilara crossed into the embassy proper one final time. The walls were bare now. The art had been removed. The books had been packed. A single case remained on a table. Inside lay the seal she had pressed for formal statements in this city. It had a simple design. The earth leaf and a line that read, "Speak straight." She lifted the seal. It was heavier than it looked. She wrapped it in cloth and placed it in her case. She took a slow breath and let the room go. A junior officer named Raji met her at the door. He had dimples and a fierce neatness. "Shuttle 3 is yours, ma'am," he said. "We will follow on 6, 8, and 10. He hesitated. "There are still envoys at the gate. They want to talk. Should I?" He did not finish. Ilara shook her head. "Treat them kindly. Give them our public note. Tell them we wish them peace." Raji's mouth twitched. He understood the pain in those words. He nodded and left outside the embassy window. The capital planet turned. It looked alive, rivers of light, storms over the ocean, cargo arcs that glowed like moons. Ilara thought of the years she had walked its streets. She thought of the markets where she learned the value of silence when buyers waited for her to fill the space with bad deals. She thought of the gardens where she learned to bow just so and not more. She thought of the long tables where she had argued with careful voices and swallowed anger, so others would not fear. She had done it for Earth. She would do this last part for Earth, too. Ilara spent her hours between ships and rooms and calls. She did not sleep much. When she did, she dreamed of oceans. In the dreams, she was very young, and waves lifted her and set her down, and the salt made her eyes sting. In the morning, the dreams felt like instructions. Lift set down Sting Endure. On the fourth day, a quiet envoy named Kareth Venn asked for a meeting. Kareth had voted for patience more times than not. He had once taken Alara to a small tea stall under a bridge and shown her how to order the strong brew that made you see colors in the rain. Alara met him in a public garden where the paths hummed with tiny insects and the air smelled like spice. She kept 2 embassy guards at a distance and did not sit. Kareth bowed. "I do not ask you to stay," he said. "I know your choice is firm. I ask only this. Tell me what I should say in the chamber when the others laugh. They will say you flinched. They will say you hid. They will say you could not stand the rules." Alara looked at him for a long moment. She saw lines of care around his eyes. She saw a small stain of tea on his sleeve. She liked him. "Tell them the truth," she said. "Tell them we are not leaving because we are weak. We are leaving because we refuse to be used. Tell them we are builders, but we will not build a ladder that only others climb. Tell them we wish them peace." Kareth's jaw worked as if he were chewing a hard seed. "Will you come back?" he asked. "When we are ready," Alara said. "When we can return with things so bright that no one can call them weapons even when they fear them. When we can return with help that costs no permission." Kareth nodded. He looked down at his hands. He looked up again. "They will not understand," he said. "They do not need to," Alara said. "Not yet." On the 5th day, the council voted to freeze Terran assets. No one could find any. The ledgers showed clean closure. The funds were gone into private accounts owned by private citizens who had left. The assets in warehouses were empty shelves and neat lists and keys already returned. The vote made a loud sound and changed nothing. On the 6th day, a small riot started outside the embassy compound. A group of traders shouted and waved slips of broken contracts. A line of human volunteers stood inside the fence. They did not shout back. They did not show fear. A little boy climbed a pole and tried to pull the Terran leaf flag down. Alara walked to the gate and looked up at him. He froze. She smiled. She said, "Would you like it?" The boy frowned and then nodded. She lowered the flag and folded it and placed it in his hands. He stared at the cloth, his mouth opened. The traders fell quiet. The riot went out like a match pinched with wet fingers. On the 7th day, Alara stood at the airlock of the last human shuttle on the station. The corridor behind her was empty now. The lights had been turned down. The silence felt thick. She placed her palm on the metal and spoke softly. "Thank you." It was silly. It was also right. The door closed. The shuttle pushed away. The station grew small. The capital grew small. The star grew small. Space opened wide and clean in the dark. The human convoy formed a line. No music played, no speeches. Only small lights blinked across the black. Alara watched the count on her screen rise as ship after ship checked in. She was the last to check. She pressed her thumb to the console and sent her code. The system flashed green. The convoy moved. As the engines warmed and the guidance sang, a private feed appeared on her glass. It came from someone far out where maps drew only fog. It showed a structure like a ring and a river and a dawn. It showed scaffolds of light. It showed a shape large enough to hold a city inside a whisper. Alara felt her throat close for a moment. Then she breathed and the moment passed. The feed ended. It left only a short line of text. It said, "We are building elsewhere." Back in the council chamber, they played Alara's first words again and again. Some mocked the simplicity. Others feared it. A few sat very still and remembered human engineers who had taught them to fix things with a line of wire and patience. A fewer still felt a strange emptiness, as if a familiar noise had stopped and now they could hear their own machines rattling. Kareth Venn asked to speak. They gave him 2 minutes. He used 1. "They did not shout," he said. "You should be careful with the people who do not shout." He stepped down. The chamber buzzed and looked for new business. In the quiet between the stars, Alara closed her eyes. She thought of her daughter's small hands tugging thread. She thought of the leaf on a blue circle. She thought of long roads and small tools and the way a seed waits under hard ground until the rain comes. She opened her eyes again. The stars were very clear. The convoy slid on. Silence wrapped them like a cloak. It did not feel like defeat. It felt like a held breath before a great leap. She leaned back in her seat and let the hum of the shuttle work into her bones. Raji's voice came soft through the line. "Ma'am, our formation is set. All routes are green. Would you like to transmit a farewell?" Alara looked at the black glass and saw her own face there, tired and bright at once. She shook her head even though he could not see. "No, she said. "We have said what we needed to say." She rested her hand on the little flag in her pocket. She spoke one more sentence for herself, and for whatever might be listening in the long dark. "We wish you peace." The shuttle tilted. The stars swung, the engines sang. Humanity walked away quietly, and the galaxy did not yet understand what silence meant. It would in time, it would for now. The convoy burned a line across the night and left no angry smoke behind, only a clear, clean trail that pointed toward a place no one else had mapped. The Great Absence. The galaxy did not notice the loss at first. The council carried on with meetings and motions and the rhythm of authority. Decrees were passed, fines were imposed, new subcommittees were announced. Life in the great capital went on with the illusion of normal. But silence has a weight, it builds slowly. It waits in the corners until someone tries to speak and hears only their own echo. That was how the absence of humanity began to spread. First in whispers, then in panic the cracks began to show. 3 months after Earth's withdrawal, the first failures started. Quantum drive cores began to malfunction. Terran components powered nearly half of all Council vessels. And though the engineers claimed they could replicate the human designs, no one truly understood the small, unpredictable adjustments that made them safe. Within a week, 7 ships exploded on startup. The Vesca blamed faulty maintenance, the Trial accused sabotage. The Zir hired privateers to seize any remaining Terran supplies from neutral depots. Small wars began at the edges of trade routes. The Council issued reassurances, but even the public transmissions stuttered. For the first time in 60,000 years of recorded Council history, light freighters sat idle in their docks waiting for parts that would never come. Ambassador Kareth Ven stood in the observation hall of the Capitol spire and watched the sky traffic thin. He had known this would happen. He remembered Alara Trent's calm voice, the way she had said, "Silence is not surrender." He whispered the words to himself like a riddle he was still trying to solve. The ghost of humanity, a dozen species sent expeditions toward Sol. Each one returned empty. The humans had locked their system behind a shimmering field of light. Every probe that approached was gently pushed off course by invisible gravity wells. The Council scientists called it the Terran Veil. The public called it the Wall of Ghosts. Rumors spread. Some said the humans had fled into dark space. Others claimed they had destroyed themselves. Still others whispered of massive fleets seen beyond mapped territory. Ships that moved without emissions. Shadows gliding between stars. In a trade port orbiting the gas giant Deluvar, a cargo master opened a sealed container marked Property of the Terran Commonwealth. Inside were 30 crates of medical nanites, each vial stamped with a date set to expire in 2 weeks. The crates were empty. A single message lay on the bottom. Carved in the metal itself, "We are building elsewhere." The words traveled faster than any official report. They appeared on news feeds, on graffiti walls, even in council proceedings to some. They sounded like a promise, to others a threat. Kareth's mission, Kareth Ven could not rest. He had once admired the humans, their creativity, their humor, their strange need to make beauty out of function. He requested permission to lead an independent mission to find them. The council agreed, though most laughed behind closed doors. His small ship, the Dawncaller, departed alone. It carried only 6 crew, 2 Zir engineers, a Trial navigator, and 3 human sympathizers from mixed colonies who had refused to leave when the exodus began. They followed the trade routes backward, toward the places where Terran colonies had thrived. The first world, Rhea 9, was empty. The farms were cleared, the machines disassembled. Not destroyed, taken, every piece carefully removed. Only one thing remained. On a ridge overlooking the sea, a plaque made of shining steel. It bore no name, only an engraving of a hand releasing a dove into the stars. The second world, Juno Belt, was colder, the mines sealed with perfect precision, the habitation domes powered down but intact. It looked less like abandonment and more like relocation. The humans hadn't fled. They had planned. Kareth recorded every sign, every message, every faint energy trace, and sent them back to the council. Few believed him. Those who did grew silent. The collapse. The collapse half. A standard year later, the council economy fell. Trade between systems became erratic. Star drives failed faster than anyone could repair them. The Vesca war fleets tried to seize control of supply lanes, and within months 10 species were at war. Medical crises spread next. Terran nanotechnology had formed the backbone of modern healthcare. Without it, diseases once extinct returned. Starving planets began to plead for aid. In one desperate session, the High Arbiter shouted across the chamber, "Why did they leave us?" No one answered. The chamber echoed with static and shame. The signal in the Dark Earth's mission pressed on. The Dawn Caller crossed into a region of uncharted space the humans once called the Rift, where gravitational storms twisted signals into static. Inside the rift, the stars looked dimmer, like old embers dying. Then in the silence, the ship caught a signal, soft, rhythmic, repeating every hour. It was old Terran binary code, a pattern used for communication beacons centuries ago. The crew followed the signal to a small moon orbiting a dead planet. There, half buried under ice, they found a relay tower still broadcasting. The power source was impossible, no heat, no radiation, just a pulse of light. Kareth approached the console. It activated when he touched it. A holographic projection shimmered. It was Alara Trent, older now. Her uniform faded, but her eyes bright as ever. "If you found this," her voice said, "then the Council has reached the edge of its own shadow. We did not abandon the galaxy. We outgrew its chains. Humanity walks among the dark clouds now. Building bridges where none existed, we are not gone. We are becoming." The recording ended. The beacon light pulsed once and went dark forever. Kareth stood there in silence, his breath catching in his throat. He realized the truth. The humans hadn't left to escape. The humans had left to build without permission. The fading order, when the Dawn Caller returned to Council space, it found chaos. The capital city was rationing power. The markets were closed. Ambassadors slept in their offices. The Council's great fleet was grounded, its drives inert. Kareth presented his findings to the Assembly, but the hall was half empty. The remaining delegates listened in silence. "They gave us every chance," he said. "They warned us with grace. They left without war. They left without revenge, and we mocked them. Now we see what they were to us, not rivals, but the foundation under everything we built." His report ended with a final message. Humanity is not lost. They are waiting until we are ready to listen. The chamber remained quiet for a long time. Then the High Arbiter stood and said, "Then perhaps silence is what we deserve." The long night years passed. The galaxy learned to survive in fragments. Small systems formed their own alliances. Trade shrank, science slowed. Whole generations grew up hearing stories of the time when humans were everywhere, helping, trading, laughing, building. And in the void between the stars, faint shadows moved. Huge shapes crossed through nebulae without sound. Ships of black metal that shimmered with soft blue flame. Some called them ghosts, some called them myths. But those who saw them said they carried a single symbol painted in white. A leaf. Enclosed in a circle, the great absence had become legend. But legends, like seeds, wait for the right season to bloom. Kareth Venn grew old waiting for that season. Every night he looked out the window of his station and whispered to the stars, "We wish you peace." He didn't know the stars were already listening. For in the silent depths beyond known space, humanity's new home stirred. Cities glowed on worlds untouched by old politics. Fleets trained not for war but for the defense of something greater. They watched and waited, not in anger but in purpose. The galaxy would call again one day, and when it did, humanity would answer, not as servants or rebels, but as architects of a better dawn. The silence was not the end. It was the breath before the next creation, and in that breath, the stars themselves seemed to whisper back, "We remember."